against a team that gives up roughly 2.5 passing TDs per game. Bryce Brown makes for a decent flex. Bills DST, they're a top 5 start up against the number four offense, or excuse me, team, allowing the 4th most fantasy points to opposing defenses and special teams, roughly 11 fantasy points. For the Jets, Chris Ivory is decent enough. I mean, the problem with him is he's going up against a Bills rush defense that barely allows 100 yards rushing and not even quite 1 touchdown per game. And then your next bet is going to be Percy Harvin, who I just think after his game from a week ago, I think he's made it pretty clear he could have been used much better than he has been, or how much better than he was used when he was with the Seahawks. In any case, the Jets get Buffalo in Buffalo. Bills win.
All right, next up on the docket, it's a homecoming game, and by that I mean it's Lovie Smith returning to Chicago. The Tampa Bay Buccaneers travel to the Chicago Bears. 1-7 are the Buccaneers. The Bears 3-5, finally getting their first home win last week. And then as you dig into the stats a little bit in that game, oh gosh, are the Bears lucky they were playing a rookie quarterback and a beleaguered offense. The Bears are a giant question mark. You never know what you're going to get out of this team. But the problem is, or the good thing is for the Bears, that the Buccaneers have been just as bad offensively, even though Mike Evans had a major coming out game last week against the last game, Sunday, November 2nd. I'm getting all confused with my dates here. I'm looking at the computer, and it's tripping my tongue a tad. Last week he had a big game, isn't he? Pro Football Reference isn't updated here. It's really confusing me now. It just threw me for a loop. Anyway, the Buccaneers' offense is putrid. The Bears' defense is just as putrid. So I'm just going to flip the coin here, and even though I was so down on the Bears never winning another game in the rest of my life last week, I will pick them to win this game at home and spoil Lovie Smith's homecoming.
Well, after you turn in your Bears fan club card, I don't know that you can necessarily pick the Bears anymore, but I'll give it to you this one time.
Oh, gee, thanks.
Yeah, you raise a lot of great points. This game sort of boils down to, I think, whoever's defense shows up this weekend is going to win the game. Both teams are going to throw up a bunch of footballs. You've got Josh McCown coming back to Chicago, and it'll be interesting to see what the reaction will be of the Chicago faithful, whether they'll welcome him back with open arms or if we're going to get all the boo birds out. But McCown, because of the matchup in the Bears give up over 2 TDs per game, and they're giving up over 250 yards passing per game. He ends up being a borderline QB1. So there might be some people out there that are thinking about sneaking him in for one of their quarterbacks that has a terrible matchup. And I mean, he is definitely an option, even though you have to worry whether he might not disappear. Other players you can consider from the Buccaneers, obviously Mike Evans. I even have him. I want to say I have him in the top 12. If I don't, I have him just outside the top 12. He's become a weekly must start, and I think you can have the conversation that Mike Evans should be talked about with players like Julio Jones, with players like Calvin Johnson, because he's just been that productive, and he's done it with 2 different quarterbacks who, quite frankly, aren't the caliber of quarterbacks that some of these wide receivers have throwing them the football. Charles Sims makes for an RB2 or flex play this week just by the sheer virtue of the fact that he was on the field for majority of the plays last week. It means he's going to get roughly 10 to 15 touches no matter what, and the Bears' rush defense isn't all that great. They give up, on average, 110 yards rushing per game. In terms of Vincent Jackson, you can look at him as a wide receiver 3 flex play this week, strictly based on the matchup. Otherwise, boy, in one league I have him and I actually cut him. In another league I have him sitting on the pine because I just have better players than him or players that are playing better than him right now. You can consider playing the Bucs defense. You have to be concerned whether they'll show up, but we all know that from time to time Jay Cutler doesn't show up, or at least Bad Jay shows up. So there is that sort of possibility that hangs out there if you want to consider it. And don't be surprised if Safarian Jenkins makes some noise this week against a Bears team that's giving up top 5 fantasy points. The positions for the Bears start Brandon Marshall, Alshon Jeffrey, Martellus Bennett, the usual suspects, and I even like Jay Cutler in this instance, given the fact that the Bucs give up close to 270 passing yards per game, and while not as many touchdowns as the Bears, on average, it's still over 2 touchdowns per game. I'm going to call this a win at home. It's just a safe place for the Bears, and I just can't see Josh McCown coming into Soldier Field and beating them.
The only thing that really scares me about this game from a Bears standpoint is the fact that Lovey knows all of Jay's ticks, you know? So I think it'd be easier to game plan against this offense because he knows what Jay can get fooled on, and not that anybody else doesn't, but if Lovie Smith can coach a defense, that's
he hasn't really coached one.
I don't think it's not his team though. You know what I mean? He's coaching. He's still coaching Raheem Morris's players. You know what I mean? It's not his team yet. You got to give him a couple of years.
Well, I might take issue with that. I can't remember the number, but I want to say that the Buccaneers have the most players on their roster right now that were not on the team last year. You can check it out as we talk about the next game.
Yeah.
But I'm pretty sure that is the truth. That's why I sort of, the players he's brought in, somehow it just isn't gelling. There's no cohesion within the defensive unit. But we'll see. Last week could have been it.
Yeah, and we'll see. We shall see, as they say in Germany. They don't really say that. The Cincinnati Bengals travel to the Houston Texans. The Bengals getting an impressive win last week at New Orleans. If there's one place New Orleans can play, it's at home, but the Bengals defense was up to the task, holding them to only 10 points. And Houston likewise with an impressive road win going into Cleveland and winning 23-7 there with first-time starter Ryan Mallett at quarterback. And whether or not you like Mallett or not, the change will stick. The question is, do you really believe that Ryan Mallett, when this Bengals defense is on, they're as tough as any defense in the league. So do you believe Ryan Mallett has enough to win this game? I'm not convinced the Bengals have found their way yet. And because of that, and the Texans being at home, I'm going to pick the Texans here to take this one. Just a complete gut.
In Keith, I'm going to disagree. I'm going to go with the Bengals in this one. Both teams had great defensive games last week. The Texans holding the Browns to 7 points, and the Bengals holding the Saints to 10. And I just can't get myself to think that the Bengals can handle a quarterback like Ryan Mallett when they fully handle a quarterback like Drew Brees. And I think what we saw last week was sort of the rebirth of that defense, and they should come out and they should come to play. It should be a good game. It should be a medium-scoring game, but on the low end, somewhere in 21-20, somewhere in there. In terms of fantasy players, there's a few you can consider in this game, certainly because the Texans give up close to 280 yards passing and slightly better than 2 TDs per game. You're going to get in A.J. Green, Mohamed Sanu. Treat Jeremy Hill like an RB2 this week. Gio Bernard's practicing, but it still sounds like he's making a slow go of it. And if he does play, he'll probably be the third down back, at least in this game, with Jeremy Hill taking the lead. Whether or not you want to consider Bernard for the flex really depends on your situation at the other running back position. If you've been desperately waiting for him to get back, then get him in your lineup. Andy Dalton ends up being a borderline play because of this matchup. If you need him, obviously play him. For the Texans, Aaron Foster, if he is indeed the running back that goes this week, I believe he did practice today, but he was limited. He is a must-start. If it's Alfred Blue, he's a must-start. Bengals give up roughly 136 yards rushing per game and a total of 12 TDs to date. I like DeAndre Hopkins as a wide receiver 3, and Andre Johnson, he's a borderline wide receiver 3. It was weird when I was doing this. I stopped for a minute and I thought to myself, Keith, God, I'm about to recommend, not exactly, but that Andre Johnson is benchable. And I thought to myself, I can't believe that because I've had this guy on my fantasy team over the years. I can't even tell you how many times.
So sad. The kids are upset.
It is. But the Bengals, they're going to roar in Houston, baby. Roar in Houston.
The Jacksonville Jaguars travel to the Indianapolis Colts. And, God, is Andrew Luck having one hell of a year, isn't he, kids? 3,300 passing yards and 28 touchdowns already. But then you look at Blake Bortles having himself a decent rookie season, nowhere near the level of Andrew Luck. That is not what I'm saying here, kids. My point is that Jacksonville, like Oakland, may have found their quarterback going forward. We'll see what happens here. It's very interesting to watch. It makes it a compelling game to view from a fan standpoint. I just don't think the outcome is going to be in much doubt here. The Colts offense is averaging 438 yards total a game, 334 of that through the air, 104 on the ground. The Jaguars defense is giving up $126 on the ground, not too much more than the Colts defense, but it will be enough to. My point I'm trying to make here is that defensively, these teams even out more than you probably think. But Andrew Luck is a difference maker, and he can put this team on his back. And a team like Jacksonville just doesn't have enough to contain him. I am going to pick the Colts easily.
Yeah, Keith, I thought that was great how you pointed out about their defenses being sort of comparable. Well, maybe not comparable, but at least performance-wise, they're not that far apart. It's 28.2 points allowed per game versus 25.3. And to me, what really makes the Colts is exactly what you said, Andrew Luck, because it's the number 3 scoring offense, averaging 31 points per game. A team like the Jaguars, who's only averaging 15.8, will never, ever, ever be a winning team if they can't break 20. Now, I think they're going to do that this game, but it's still not going to be enough. In terms of your fantasy options here, Denard Robinson has just settled in as an everyday running back in the football world, and in fantasy football, he's just outstanding. I think he makes for a top start this week against a Colts defense that's given up around 113 rushing yards and 12 TDs to date. So that means he should be guaranteed a touchdown for you. Then you got to like Cecil Shorts and Allen Hurns. Allen Robinson is done for the season. Cecil, he's just a steady wide receiver 3, so you're looking for him to get you 100 yards and maybe a score. And Allen Hurns, I think you can treat him as a flex. He should be in line for 100 yards, and the question is whether he gets you a touchdown as well. Andrew Luck is a top start. He's a top start for the week, along with T.Y. Hilton, and the Colts defense. They're, in fact, a top 2 start. They're going up against a Jaguars team that's given up 5 defensive touchdowns to date. That's pretty amazing because there's only one other team allowing that much, and everyone else is more or less 1 or 2, if any. In terms of the tight end position, this is a week to get Coby Fleener active, and here's why. First, Dwayne Allen may not play. I know he's been out of his walking boot from this past weekend. But, this is a great time for a Colts team to just get healthy with the playoffs not too far away. But the other reason is the last time the Colts played the Jaguars back in Week 3, Andrew Luck threw for 300 yards and 4 TDs. Coby Fleener and Dwayne Allen each had a touchdown score. So one way or another, Coby Fleener's getting to that end zone. And if you need the help, he's the guy to get this week. You go ahead and pick him up and plug him in. It's going to be interesting to see how Trent Richardson and Dan Heron split the rushing duties this week. Trent Richardson didn't have too bad of a game last time out against the Jaguars. He had around 80 or 90 all-purpose yards. So the real question is whether the Colts are going to let Dan Heron literally fill in for Ahmad Bradshaw. I think you have to be hesitant, even though I wouldn't hesitate picking him off waivers and putting him on my bench. T-Rich, you can treat him as a flex if you want. More than likely, if he's even still on your roster, you're not going to play him. It may not be a bad week to just sit back, see what happens, and then roll the dice next week. Colts win.
The Green Bay Packers travel to the Minnesota Vikings. The Vikings, once again, being distracted by the name Adrian Peterson. Finally, arbitrator weighing in that, Goodell is well within his rights to suspend him for the rest of the season, and it really is a good thing. without getting too deep into Adrian Peterson's business, I really have a problem with the fact that he refuses to see that he did anything wrong. But